Welcome to First Bite, our Detroit Lions midweek podcast where we have a very special guest and we are right in the middle. We're actually kind of towards the end of our NFL draft review where we get special guests to talk about the Lions draft picks, experts on the Lions draft pick. My name is Jeremy Reisman. I'm the producer over at Pride of Detroit. You can find me at Detroit Online. With me, as always, as co-host of First Bite is the senior editor of Pride of Detroit at Ryan_POD on Twitter. Ryan Matthews is here, buddy. How we doing?
Doing well. I think this is the first time we've ever double dipped on an
Yeah.
episode, right?
Yes.
Two prospects for the price of one.
That's right. And no, we are not doing the Alabama boys. We're going a little bit out of order here. So if you're wondering where the Brian Branch episode is, it's coming next week. We are doing the Iowa boys instead. It is time to talk Sam LaPorta and Jack Campbell, and to make sure we have the most accurate, up to date information on these fellas, we got ourselves an Iowa expert. He is the publisher at Hawkeye Report on Twitter. Tom Kakert is with us. Tom, thanks for joining us, man.
Well, thank you guys for inviting me. And I got to tell you, and I got to give a shout out to my friend Matt Randazzo, who I do a podcast with. And Matt is one of five Lions fans in the Quad Cities area in Iowa, Illinois. I think it's just his entire family, his four boys, and his brother. They are the Lions fans in the Quad Cities, and that's it. There's no other ones, but he's very jealous because he's a listener of this podcast.
Oh, really? Hey, well,
Yes.
appreciate that. Lives colliding here. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, he's about to hear a bunch of information. I guess he probably already knows, but we're gonna start with this segment with all things Sam LaPorta, our favorite golden receiver, as we like to call him so far. Let's start at the beginning. 2019. It seems like a long time ago at this point. A 3-star recruit. Was this a kind of recruitment pickup that wasn't necessarily, I mean, 3-star, maybe that's okay. I don't mean to be insulted. Maybe that's okay by Iowa standards, but
No.
what was this something that really hit the radar, or was this just kind of something that was maybe more so under the radar?
He was really intriguing because they had kind of followed him most of the year, but it was a later offer, and he was more of a wide receiver than he was a tight end. But his frame was that you could see he was going to be a tight end, but it wasn't like he was doing a lot of blocking. He was catching passes, a lot of them, and that was the nature of his kind of rise there at Highland, and he's kind of from the same area that AJ Epinesa
Mm-hmm.
is from in the Epinesa family. So I kind of knew of him through them as well because they were pretty excited to get Sam because they were kind of, I think, in the same conference or right around the same area. So they had a pretty good bond. But yeah, he was an intriguing prospect just because I knew he could catch the ball and I knew he could run, and it was just a matter of putting on the weight and doing that in his freshman year.
Now, Tom, did that transition all happen in his freshman year? And what kind of transformation did you see from him, I guess, over his time in Iowa?
Yeah, his freshman year was pretty interesting because he was doing some special teams work, and that just tells when they do that, it tells me that they really like him and they think that maybe he could find a role. And so it was later in the year. They're playing Northwestern, and they had some injuries at tight end, and so they kind of broke the glass on him a little bit and got him out there. And he almost had one of the most remarkable catches I've ever seen in his first game starting at Northwest or playing at Northwestern. He didn't hold on to it, but I'll never forget our photographer caught the photo, and he was like draped over a guy and catching it behind the guy's back almost, and he just couldn't hold on to it. But that was like the welcome to the Big Ten. Here you are, Sam LaPorta play right out of the gate, and he played quite a bit the rest of the way at tight end. Um, I think he would be the first to admit he was a work in progress as a blocker, and that's for Iowa tight ends, as successful as they have been catching the football. if you don't block, you're probably not going to play a whole lot, and you're going to see your snaps limited. So that was one thing he had to pick up along the way was becoming a good blocker. And by the time he left, he was a really good blocker. He enjoyed it.
Interesting. All right. When did he, I guess, make that metamorphosis from guy that's learning the tight end position, guy that's learning to block, to like someone who you're like, oh, this is a guy who's not only going to play a big part in Iowa's program, but he could be a guy that hears his name called on day 1 or day 2 of the NFL draft. Was it the junior year where we saw the statistical breakout, or was it earlier than that?
Yeah, I think it was probably sophomore going into junior year when you kind of just saw it and you go, sophomore year, I kind of thought, you know what, he's got a chance. He's got a chance. Even his freshman year, really, I thought, boy, he's going to be interesting to watch. But then at junior year, you could just see the confidence coming out of him every game. He's just more and more confident, making plays, had a good chemistry with the quarterback, and just made plays. He was just making plays, big plays, and getting first downs and being a leader. One of the kind of hallmarks of Sam LaPorta is when he catches a first down, he's going to signal and let everyone in the stadium know that he just picked up a first down. So get prepared for that. He's going to point down the field and let you guys know that the Lions have just picked up a first down. So Hawkinson was like that too, though.
Yeah, he was.
So that's a Hawk thing, and I know people will ask who is he most comparable to, and I think it's Hawkinson. Yeah. I really do. I kind of think he's more Hawkinson than he is George Kittle. George Kittle is just a unique animal where he's just his speed and the physicality that he plays with is just different. And Noah Fant's just different. He's just, athletically, Noah Fant's just off the charts. But and the other comparison with Sam and with Hawk is they were both kind of smaller school guys where they were not really tight ends. They were receivers and in their offense, but they were bigger kids, bigger guys at the high school level. So that's why I always kind of compared those two. And I remember when Sam came in, I said, well, he's a TJ Hawkinson starter kit kind of guy. So that's where I've always compared him.
So Tom, is there anything particular about what they do at Iowa, just because they've kind of become known as maybe the tight end factory of the collegiate world? You mentioned a little bit when it comes to the expectations for tight ends in Iowa, they have to be a blocker, and receiving is a nice thing. So is it something about how well-rounded they come out? Is there something particular about what they do at Iowa that makes them so NFL ready?
It's an interesting question. And I really think that the Iowa tight end tradition goes back all the way to the Hayden Fry era, when Hayden came to the University of Iowa in 1979. And you guys are probably too young to remember this, but Iowa's tight ends used to stand up at the end of the line. That was the Hayden Fry thing, and he liked his tight ends standing up instead of being down in a stance because he felt like they could look at the secondary and assess what's going on in the secondary to figure out what their route's going to be. So I always thought it was interesting, but Kirk's always been a hand on the ground tight end guy. And I think part of Iowa's success has simply been because they use the tight end. Where in college football today, there just are not a lot of programs that use tight ends and have tight ends in their roster. There's so many teams that are just pure spread teams, and the tight end is basically a blocker on a third down play. Where Iowa is going to use a tight end. They're going to use fullbacks. They're going to do things that are more NFL-ish in some ways than the college game. But even the NFL is kind of, you're seeing fewer and fewer use of the tight end. But they're they're kind of hybrids now, right? And they're sort of like this bigger, more athletic wide receiver kind of guys in some ways. And um, Sam's more just kind of like the traditional tight end, and he's going to be. But I think you guys are just going to enjoy covering him.
Yeah.
You're going to enjoy spending time with him. He's a hoot, and he's fun, and he loves football, and that's just one of the things that just jumps off the page at you when you watch him play the game. Is there is a love of football.
Yeah, and that's pretty much mandatory to walk in the door when Dan Campbell's your head coach. So
Yes.
we know that was probably a big reason he came to Detroit here. But I want to go back to the Hockenson comparison, because obviously that I think is going to grab a lot of Lions fans' attentions, and some for good reasons, some for bad reasons, because as you may or may not know, I think he has a very mixed reputation here in Detroit after getting traded.
Yes.
Very good receiver. I think everyone can mostly agree with, although some people have issues with him falling down too much after he catches. But I want to go to the blocking aspect of his game, because that was something that I think was advertised, that was billed as something that Hockenson was pretty darn good at Iowa, but it didn't quite translate as much as I think Lions fans were hoping.
Mm-hmm.
How does LaPorta compare, would you say, to Hockenson? Are they on kind of the same ground to you?
Yeah, I think they're pretty similar in the blocking stage of things, but I do think Laporta's probably a little bit better. He's a little more willing. He's going to stick his nose in there a little bit more, maybe than Hawk did, but he's still, you know, uh, he's not a devastating blocker.
Right.
You know what I
He's
mean?
not George Kittle.
He's not George Kittle, who's going to put you in the ground and stand over you. He's just not like that. But he's closer to that than I think TJ was when he was with the Lions and in the NFL. I think TJ's is more of a he's always been more of a receiver
Yeah.
than a blocker. But it's funny, when he was playing with Noah Fant, TJ was the better blocker of those two, for sure. I mean, Fant was more of a just he wasn't all that interested in blocking. Sometimes he would do it. He would do it fairly effectively, but I think both those guys were more a receiver than the blocker.
Is there something to say? You mentioned earlier, Tom, that both Hockenson and LaPorta both came to Iowa, and they were more receivers than they were tight ends. That clay required some molding. But what about Sam's game as a receiver really jumps off the page to you? As you know, is it his hands? Is it his ability to move at his size? What really makes him a unique receiver at the tight end position?
I think he's a really good route runner. I think he knows how to kind of find an open space and make himself available. There were times, though, I will say this, earlier in his career when he had some drops. He did, but and sometimes they were easy drops, and he would be the first one to blame himself that he just dropped it. But he also will make some crazy catches that he probably shouldn't have caught. So he's very unique in that respect, that sometimes he makes the hard look easy and the easy look hard. And but that was earlier in his career, I think, more than the last 2 years. I thought he really caught everything, and just always found a way to get open. And Iowa's pass game, I think it's pretty well documented. The pass game, like last year, was just not very good. Just last 2 years, really not very good, and that's being kind, probably, to not very good. They were bad, but he was the main target, and everybody knew that he was the main target, and yet he would still get open, and he would still catch passes. And to me, that's an impressive trait, that you can still be an effective player and be able to make plays.
That's a good transition to what I want to talk about next, which is Sam LaPorta as a person, because I know there was kind of an iconic moment. I think it was last year when Iowa won a game that was like 9-6 or something, and someone asked Jack Campbell about the offense versus the defense. The offense not carrying their load. Actually, I think this was Jack Campbell. Now that I think about it, so maybe we'll talk about it with Jack Campbell's. But let me talk about Sam LaPorta as a person, because you mentioned
Sam did say something too.
Okay, yeah, let me hear
And
it.
it was one of the rare times where I thought Sam kind of got pissed.
Mm.
He got angry, and um, because I think the line of questioning was kind of like trying to insinuate there was some sort of divide and that the offense stinks and everything,
Right.
and just he was ticked,
Hmm.
and he kind of let us have it back a little bit, which was fine. I mean, but that was like the first time I've ever kind of see him uh, get get angry at us,
Yeah.
because he's usually the life of the party when you're talking to him and having fun, and you usually end up laughing about some stuff more than you end up uh, having a uncomfortable moment. And that was a tough. Boy, I mean, the game was 9-6,
Yeah.
and it was a gross football game. It was just bad. And Kirk got asked if he was going to fire his son.
Oh, jeez.
Um, you know, and we'll talk about Jack in a little bit, because I've got some great stories about Jack that day too, because he was so vital to holding that team together. When an offense is going bad and a defense is carrying you, it can go south fairly quickly.
Sure.
And Jack Campbell held the Iowa football team together.
Well, do you have a similar story maybe about the jovialness of Sam? Because, like I said, we like to call him the golden receiver already, because he just looks like a happy golden retriever out there when he's on the field. And yeah, we've definitely already seen some of that kind of silliness to him in some of the media reports, media sessions. So is there maybe a story, a moment, or something where his character really came through?
Here's my great character story, and it's not really a funny story, but just tells you everything you need to know about Sam LaPorta. So he got hurt his knee, had knee surgery hurt his knee in the Minnesota game. So he didn't play against Nebraska. He really wanted to play against Nebraska. That was his last home game. And honestly, there's a lot of guys in his position, knowing that he was going to be an NFL draft pick, that wouldn't have played in the Music City Bowl. They would have just shut it down, and said, I'm making a business decision. And no one would have blamed him, honestly. I mean, if he shut it down, right? He's going to be a top 3 round NFL draft pick. You're coming off, it was minor knee surgery, but it was knee surgery, still surgery.
Yeah.
And, you could take another shot to that knee, and boy, then all of a sudden you're a 5th round pick, and you're losing money, and there's going to be questions about you. And we've seen guys over the years get injured in bowl games too, and see their draft stock plummet. Um, he didn't. He went out and played hard, played tough. And here's the crazy thing, and this just tells you about Sam LaPorta, the teammate. So Iowa had 2 quarterbacks transfer. Well, they had a quarterback transfer, the backup quarterback, Alex Padilla. Spencer Petras was hurt. He tore up his shoulder, so he wasn't going to be able to play. So they're at their 3rd-string quarterback who's never taken a snap. They got a 4th-string quarterback who's a true freshman that hadn't played a bit. We go into practice one day down in Nashville. Sam LaPorta's taking snaps at quarterback. It just tells you everything you need to know about Sam LaPorta. And he was loving it. I was just like, Sam, you going to throw a pass? I don't know. Maybe. He ran a series in that bowl game at quarterback as like a Wildcat quarterback. So, and he loved it. And he was just having so much fun back there. Everybody on the bench was going crazy. And they won the game. They were in control of the game, but yeah, they ran him out there as the kind of the Wildcat quarterback, and it was pretty awesome. And that tells you everything you need to know about what the coaches thought of Sam LaPorta, and the sacrifices that he made to be a good teammate and to be a leader on the Iowa football team, running out there with a knee that, he said it was 100%. I'm sure it was, or he wouldn't have been out there. But still, you're coming off surgery, and just there's a lot of guys that make a business decision, and he didn't.